everybody, welcome to Wigan Fan TV. Sorry we're a couple of minutes late, just blamed Stu. He's still been doing the toilet roll challenge in his house. Literally. We won't say what Mark and myself have just had to listen to. Anyway, never mind. Welcome everybody. David, Stu, Mark, Matt will be joining us in just a little while, probably with some story of why he was late or deliberately late. It can't be Canoe Club tonight, because surely that's been banned. But David, nice to see you on the screen and in a house rather than a car. That's a bonus. I suppose all that activity's been banned now, hasn't it?
Social distant dogging.
So what our plan is tonight is that we don't have a plan as normal, but what we thought we would do at some point is start talking maybe about the 2006 season, because that seems to be something that has been shown quite a lot on Facebook and Wigan TV, and Mark is nicely pointing to the jersey behind him. And then they've moved on to the 2007 season this week, haven't they? And I think the 2006 season is the one that it was such a bad season that it was good because we managed to get the Great Escape. But that was the season, I think, that is our kind of point that we go back to, is how we engage fans and how the crowd numbers were going up despite the fact that we were battling with relegation. It just feels like a good place perhaps to have a look at and reset and see what our memories are of 2006. Stu, do you want to talk us through, before we go on to anything about that, your little your toilet roll challenge today, if anybody's not seen it?
It was good crack, enjoyed it, good laugh. You know, brighten the spirits up. Absolutely enjoyed it.
Good try.
Mark, downward pressure always there, son. Terra firma. No video referee needed. But on a serious note, I thought, well, let's do something. Let's have a laugh. You know, we'll do it. Well, why not? But I was amazed, Sean. I was amazed with your editing of how many times I've done that toilet roll between my legs, because that was only twice. That was a few times. But no, all good fun. That's what we'll Sorry?
I definitely missed the trick by not referring it to the video ref.
Definitely.
That's what we should have done. Right,
Benefit of doubt.
Yeah, actually, I think there was a little bit of a bubble, actually, now that I come to think of it. I'm going to try it. The comments have just disappeared off my screen, so I will try and get the comments on the screen in just a second. Mark, talk us through what you've been doing on social media with your sort of trip back through the years of your jerseys behind you.
Yeah, I nearly forgot today, but I just remembered before we started. But yeah, I've been basically wearing a different Wigan shirt every day, from the oldest one that I've got, which is the 1998 home shirt, which I think I borrowed from my granddad or one of my uncles ahead of that grand final, because I wasn't a regular attender yet at that stage. And just never gave it back. So started from that. I'm on to day 20 today, which, as you can see, is the 2016 away shirt, which was the one that Don Manfredi wore when he ripped Saints apart at Langtree Park, or whatever, Totally Wicked or whatever it was called at that stage, in a dominant Good Friday win. So yeah, it's been good trying to fit into them all, and so far there was only the cotton purple shirt from 2012 that has been a bit of a squeeze, but I'm about to move on to some area mediums, like the Hall of Fame shirt, which was a small. The mediums became smalls at that stage, so I'm thinking the next couple of days I might have some squeezes to get through before I started buying large shirts and adjusting to my spread.
I mean, rather you than me. I'm glad that I'm not trying to fit into my 2006 shirt. I was going to look for it before, because I reckon actually that's probably one of the shirts that I could probably get into. And it was the blue, was it 2006? Yeah, it was the blue away shirt with Palliacina on the back, which I couldn't bring myself to throw out just because of how expensive it is to get Palliacina on the back when you pay per letter. I'd never even seen him play a game when I got that on the back as well. I got that in anticipation, and it all started well with him scoring a try, although we lost at Catalans, but we'll come on to that in just a second. David,
yeah.
What year is your shirt from?
It's around the time of the 2000s. The closest one to 2006 I could get is the Adidas ones. I think it was just before.
2002 home shirt. That I only got the away shirt that year. and randomly for some reason I have it in a large, which it makes no sense because I was like 17 and really, really skinny. But I think it's the 2002 shirt.
So that's the one with the sort of like the one that we won the Challenge Cup in the away kit, the blue one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that one as well. I really like that blue away shirt that we won the Challenge Cup in. Anybody been up to anything particularly exciting during lockdown, apart from Stu with his toilet roll? No.
I'm working still, so
Yeah,
this is my excitement.
I'm still working, so not too bad.
So am I. I'm trying to find the comments from everybody. I'm going to try and pop this comment on, but I think
Well, this and recording episodes of the Super League pod still. We're still going, doing those podcast shows if people want to listen to those. We've been talking not about current events as much because there's been no matches, but we've been talking about our favourite players at all the positions, and we've worked through. We're going to be talking about props next week. We've just talked about wingers, so probably a couple of wingers that we'll talk about today. If we're talking about 2006, came up on that episode as well. But Martin and I got a lot of talk from the listeners.
Yeah, and if anybody was to enjoy people talking about him, Martin and Fire will definitely be that person. And so anything that's happened in the world of rugby league that we can particularly talk about. NRL has been locked in today or yesterday. Right. It starts on the 28th. David, your thoughts on that? Is on the fact that we're going to have rugby league back in just over a month's time in Australia?
I mean, obviously, anything that happens that's bringing rugby league back is positive. I'm still a little bit cautious of how they can lock it in and confirm that's going to be the case, because we're still none the wiser. I don't think anything will get back to normal till June at the earliest. So how they can confidently say, "Yep, we're going to go ahead and do it," I'm not sure the logistics behind it and where the thought process has come from, but. Anything. I mean, if it does get going and whatever I've not read into too much detail, but if it's behind closed doors or whatever, then it's an ideal opportunity because people are crying out for any sport, anything that's happening is a positive effect at the moment, I think.
We've got the comments back on. I think people are saying there's potentially a little bit of an issue with the sound. We'll talk up as much as we can do. Hopefully that's...
Oh, we're quiet.
Yeah, apparently.
I know why it is. There we go. That'll be better for everybody. I think it's me. Because I was rushing around just before the show, trying to get sorted because we're very, very, very organised on this show. So yeah, we've got that returning. Mark, Magic Weekend officially now sort of postponed. Your thoughts on the fact that it's postponed and not cancelled, and what you think that the reasons behind that?
It means they don't want to start processing refunds yet. Is what it means to me, and they're figuring out how they're going to deal with around that, because the Summer Bash has already also been cancelled, and they are processing refunds for the Summer Bash, the Championship version of the Magic Weekend. So that's all I can think. I mean, it'd be nice if they could get to a stage where if we have to play behind closed doors to get the season back up and running at some point, but then we can have some sort of Magic Weekend style big splash launch back into non-social distancing measures, then that might be a nice way to bring everyone back into it if they're dreaming. But I think eventually it'll get cancelled and people will be asking for ticket refunds, but they don't want to handle that yet.
Would you rather see it cancelled, or would you rather... And my concern with it is that we try and keep it just for the sake of keeping it, and we end up playing 2 days worth of games at Headingley or at a rugby league stadium, so that the revenue really does stay within the sport. And I feel like that takes the magic away from Magic. Jimmy's just put on here, Magic is all about the money, and that's probably the way that they can bring a bit more money in, is by hosting it at a rugby league ground. Stu, do you think that there's a danger there that by just having it for the sake of having it diminishes it for future years, and it's just a pointless fixture if we can't have what we set out to have in the first place?
Yeah, I don't know if this would work, but just to throw one in the ring, next year's World Cup, I don't know if they could say, well, you've got tickets for Magic, why can't you just get a voucher and swap them for the England game? That's the thing, or up till where the Falcons play, up at where Thunder play, up there. I don't know, just an option. Do you know what I mean? So,
I mean, you'd think that the RFL would be confident of selling the England games anyway. So if it was maybe a couple of other games for the World Cup, it potentially would work. But I think
it's a Super League event, though, isn't it? Not a rugby league event. The Magic Weekend.
And you think that's the reason why the RFL have cancelled the Big Bash, but Super League are holding on? Right, okay.
Because they have offered a ticket swap for the Ashes games or for Challenge Cup finals or for things like that for the Summer Bash instead of refunds if people want to choose that, even though the Ashes is getting less and less likely to go ahead. And there's more chance that we're playing Super League in November than that we're playing the Ashes, I think, right now, personally.
David, one thing that has happened today is the reserves have been officially cancelled. We got them back after however many years, and then they're the sort of first casualty, understandably, at the moment. The RFL are encouraging teams to keep friendlies in place. Do you think that's perhaps a nod towards the fact that we may see more games per week and teams will need to use the sort of the reserve players and the under-19s players?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of talk about the players and the ones that are coming off contract as well. But Wigan have always maintained. I mean, Wigan always tried, didn't they, when the reserves weren't part of the structure, to try and have some form of competition. There was lots of talk mooted around a little unofficial league with the likes of Warrington and St Helens because a few teams are keeping them. But yeah, it's more and more likely that they're going to be shoehorning. You might get to a stage where you're playing sort of the weekend, then midweek, then the weekend again, and that's going to stretch the players because they're not going to be match fit either when they come back. It's you can't just sort of turn around and say right, we're back to normal. The games are kicking off on Saturday or whatever, whether that be behind closed doors just for keeping people safe. So it's going to take a lot of eggs. It's going to be a lot on the players because you see them sort of training, keeping themselves fit. But there's only so much they can do at home. There's only so much they can do in their own gyms and in their own surroundings. So it's going to test them. It's going to test them physically and mentally. I think it really is.
And are we going to? Do you think? Do the players need a pre-season before we go into the season? I mean, they're going to need a period of training, but I mean, are we talking pre-season games? Do you think is it a complete restart in terms of all of that, or do you reckon we could go straight into it?
I think they'll have to go straight into it because of how many games we're going to be that far behind to get the season finished in a timely manner. I don't think, but ideally you'd want. I mean, everybody's going to be on the same level, aren't they? Everybody's in the same boat, so I would imagine that whenever they start, they'll all start simultaneously, or they should do. Whether or not clubs will have the opportunity to, maybe a Wigan will just use the reserve players in that capacity. Maybe they'll just have some hit outs, behind closed doors themselves once that restriction's lifted, and they can do that. That's the only way I think it would happen because the clubs will be under pressure to get the competitive fixtures resolved, and however that income comes in, if they're behind closed doors, if that's TV revenue, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of unanswers, isn't there, at the moment?
I've got an email from Chris Radlinski which I've shared with you guys, which I'll sort of read out a couple of notes from in just a minute. It probably gives a bit of an insight as to where the sport is and where the club is in terms of sort of prep for where we might go. Contrasting things here for you, Mark. Spencer says one of the best things that may come from this is that we may get a Boxing Day derby back. And then the comment straight after from Gary is, how do you guys think about what the clown at Headingley said, wanting us to play games in December? Mark, when does the season need to end for you in terms of then we can sort of not hinder 2021 and what Stu's already said is a World Cup year?
I think that the most sensible thing is for everyone to get around the table and say we can't play 29 weekly rounds. That it's just not a feasible idea. So straight away, knock on the head the 6 loop fixtures, the Magic Weekend, which effectively is the 7th loop fixture. If that's the case, and we got back into some sort of behind closed doors in mid-May when this current lockdown period ends, then actually you could get the season done with only 1 or 2 3-game weeks. But that's unlikely. I think it's more like David said, that we'd be talking about June or even July. So the season probably does have to get extended. But I wouldn't want to see the rugby league season go into December. And I would actually want them to use this as an opportunity to properly reset on how we want the sport to look and think about a shorter season next year as well with fewer weekly rounds, maybe, to make sure we can preserve and get NRL buy-in on that too, to make sure we can preserve the World Cup. I think that's a huge asset that we need to preserve at this stage.
One of the things that we discussed last week, and you just mentioned there, is our loot fixtures. And I was very much on board last week. We'd say just get rid of the loot fixtures. They're there for the sake of extending the season, and bringing a bit more cash in. But get rid of them. It sort of simplifies it a little bit. But then I was thinking, getting rid of those loot fixtures is actually the biggest problem that the sport may face because of the lack of income. That would be lost from not having those loot fixtures, and perhaps there's clubs that actually rely on those fixtures to bring in the extra income, and that's why we have them in the first place. So,
that's why we have them.
And I'm starting to think that we can't actually get rid of them, and that we're gonna be stuck with them.
However, Sean, if you're playing them on Wednesday nights, or if you're playing them in November when that team season's effectively done and they're not going to get... I mean, what do we do about promotion and relegation anyway? But that's another question. I think you can't really have it, especially if we don't know what's going to happen with the French sides and how soon they can get back over into our competition as well. That's another logistical conundrum there to get dealt with. I just don't think we can have... we can't have everything. We have to give up something. And clubs have managed to keep the costs at bay by using the furlough scheme. They've asked players to reduce their wages as well, which will live beyond the end of this. Live beyond the lockdown, the games not being played. So for them to still pay the players less, but try and get the same amount of income, well, why aren't the players being paid the same then? The players will not really appreciate that, I think. And also, how many people are going to go on a Wednesday night?
Well, there's a knock-on effect then with season tickets, isn't there? I mean, it's an absolute nightmare. I mean, you paid for the loot fixtures.
I can't imagine there's too many people in this current environment. I know lots of people are struggling monetary-wise and stuff, but anyone who's already paid the season ticket up before the season started, I can't imagine too many rugby league fans will be going to their club and asking for the money back. They realise, the economics of the situation. Maybe those who pay it by direct debit might want to knock off a payment or something. I understand that completely. But if it's already a sunk cost, I'd be shocked if there's that many rugby league fans out there trying to get refunds from their clubs.
So, Stu, it comes to you. The sort of suggestion that you put to us 2 weeks ago on the show was pay-per-view. Tony Smith and Kevin Sinfield, big fans of this show, watch it week in, week out. The following week came up with a really good idea of having pay-per-view games, Stu.
Yeah, we barely watched that.
So, taking into consideration what we just said about the loot fixtures, that who wants them on a Wednesday night? Do we want them on a Wednesday night if the pay-per-view, Stu? Is that the way that this could work?
Well, swings and roundabouts, isn't it? But as you say, for the pay-per-view thing, all joking aside, it's getting money back in the kit, ain't it? You know what I mean? Not just for us, but secondly, your Wakefield boys. No disrespect to Cass. Obviously, Rob will have something to say different to that, But they all need money back in the kit, ASAP. So as soon as it starts behind closed doors, if we have to, as you say, a couple of games mixed up among themselves behind closed doors to get fitness up, and then. But here's an option for you. When you do pre-season friendlies and they usually set off just so they get the fitness up. What about doing 20 minutes, then have a break, then 20 minutes? If we've got a big squad, why don't we rotate them? And I think you'll find that a lot of teams will do that, won't they? If you're going to be playing twice a week, you're going to be rotating a lot of things. As you say, 20 minutes, half time, 20 minutes finish. You know what I mean? To the start getting their fitness back.
That's definitely something that's been suggested, hasn't it? Having sort of breaks after quarters. I mean, Brian McDermott wanted to finish the games after 60 minutes.
I see that.
I mean, there's obviously lots of different things, but I think we get closer to Stu's suggestion of pay-per-view as the weeks go by, because the likelihood is that the games are going to be played behind closed doors. And how do you get that revenue into the clubs? And perhaps Stu's suggestion of pay-per-view. Mark, you're not too keen on that?
Pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much, but every which way I've thought about it, I just can't picture the revenues that it could generate being sufficient in any way, shape or form. People aren't going to pay the cost of a ticket price for it. It still has some costs itself, and you've got to remember, if the clubs are starting to play games, then their players can't be furloughed. So at the moment, clubs aren't paying their players' wages, the government are. But as soon as they start playing games, clubs have to pay the players' wages. If you think 5,000 people paying a fiver to watch a game, if you're going to get that, because I'm not going to want to pay if I'm a season ticket holder as already, fair enough, I said I won't ask for money back, but I would expect to get something for what I've paid if there's games being played. So I don't want to go too far down that line. I think it's a great idea. I just don't know if it's actually going to raise that any money at all at the end of the day when you really break down the figures, unfortunately. I'd love it to. I'd love there to be a way out of this because I love rugby league and I want it to be played again and I want it to survive long term.
Before we go back to the good old days of a relegation battle in 2006, David, your thoughts on pay-per-view and what Mark's just said there about sustaining it. I mean, I think one of the suggestions was that you would have this kind of system. You would log on. You would say who you support. If you support Wigan, if you support Doncaster, if you support Newcastle, whoever you supported, the funds would actually go to them. So if it was a Wigan Saints game and you were a Doncaster fan, and you put that you were a Doncaster fan, the money for that revenue that you've paid would go to there. That was one of the suggestions that was made. David, your thoughts?
Yeah, just with Mark, really. I just think the numbers wouldn't stack up, and obviously the problem with things around streaming online, there's always ways around it, and if people can find a way of circumnavigating the system and the login to get a freebie, then they will do so. And there's going to be costs involved, like Mark said. There's going to be costs involved in getting that set up and getting that, getting the production, getting the cameras there. Because I'm sure that if they were doing a pay-per-view, they wouldn't be looking for no disrespect to the Wigan Warriors B, but they'd be looking for more than a static camera at Robin Park if they were paying money for it as well. So it would just be difficult to recoup the costs. There's an appetite for rugby league there, but I'm not sure that's the right answer at this stage.
Spencer just put the point on about a centralised stream being initiated, a bit like the NRL have got. But I think that the thing is we're talking about two completely different budgets, aren't we? I mean, the NRL feels like, yes, that can work because they've already got that system in place. They stream every single game. It's available worldwide via an app and you pay a subscription. And they don't need people in the stands. Obviously, it's going to make a hit on them financially, but the fact that they've got that all ready to go, we'll be starting from scratch. And it's going to be, you can just imagine we go with it, and that first game that they pick so happens to be St Helens versus Wigan, and the stream doesn't work. Yeah, it's just not going to go down well.
The way their finances are structured, it's TV revenue is the primary driver, whereas ours is match day revenue is still a huge part of the ongoing season-long finances, much more so than it is in Australia. So it's a different model. And like you say, they've already got infrastructure in place that we don't have, sadly, which would... I'd love it. I'd love someone to come along and say, here's a platform, you can do it on for free. And so you don't pay me anything to host, to display it, anything like that. I'd love to be the super generous person out there who can run all this stuff for us, and then we can start charging and just make profit. That would be a dream. I'd love it.
If only Richard Branson fancied getting involved in rugby league. Imagine that.
They'd make the government pay for it.
I was just going to say.
Gary says, I think it was about £50,000 for production costs a few years ago to get the video ref at every game. So that gives you a rough indication, I guess, of where the costs are. Before we move on to sort of our sort of 2006 ramble, this is just part of an email from Chris Radlinski, which I think is just probably points where the club are at, where the sport are at. So just in the context was just between emails, and Chris Radlinski said, we're fighting hard for the long-term survival of the club and the sport. We'll get there, I promise you. We're all going to have to feel some of the pain to get through this, and we will. I'm very optimistic that people will flood back to the game and not take it for granted. But I'm also realistic and understand that the world will take some time to get back on its feet after this, and that many people will be cutting their own cloth accordingly. We are still unsure when we will start again. It's still the intention to complete a full season, although slightly extended. But the longer the lockdown goes on, the more at risk this is. So I mean, there's nothing new in there other than nothing's been decided. But I think one of the key things that I took from that is that they're looking still to complete the full season at this moment in time. So Luke fixtures are still there at this moment in time. and they won't be cut particularly easily. But I think, like we've just discussed, that they're going to probably have to go at some point the longer this goes on.
Can I throw one last idea in then on this, if that's okay?
Go on.
I think we need to get the Challenge Cup going first. I know not every club will still be involved in the Challenge Cup, but and we could, if necessary, just say, sorry, Catalans, whoever you were playing gets a bye if they need need an extra 2 weeks to get it all sorted from their end or whatever. But tickets haven't been sold for Challenge Cup matches, so that's not a problem. The BBC can broadcast some of the games, which is a great potential audience. If we could be the first live sport on the BBC, that would be absolutely incredible, wouldn't it? And it's not. Teams might not worry as much about not being fully match fit if it's what chance have you got anyway? It's kind of a knockout game anyway, so you're going to lay it on the line sort of thing. But it's not. It just seems like a good opportunity to get it back started if we're going to be behind closed doors on television. Cup games.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and probably music to the ears of Widnes fans, because that's who Catalans have got in the Challenge Cup. So Widnes would get a bye. They would miss out on that home game that they've got and the massive away following that Catalans bring and the income that would bring. So they'll probably take that mark. Right, okay. Let's move on to our 2006 flashback. This is purely because I found myself watching the games on Wigan TV and sort of going back through and actually seeing the mess that we were in 2006. It's actually unbelievable when you think about where we came from. The fact that we got Michael Dobson and the fact that we got Stuart Fielden and we only got deducted 2 points the following season for doing that is absolutely incredible. But let's go around. What were you doing in 2006? What are your memories of 2006? Stu, what were you doing in 2006?
2006. Oof, God, going back a bit there. I didn't have grey hair then. That was one thing. And it was starting to get grey hair, but probably getting ready to go out, have a night out.
The whole of 2006?
No, the thing, man. No. But just everything, all that season, it was, how can I put it, up and down, springboard, all you want to call it. But at the end of the day, true warrior spirit, we stopped up. Dobson, as you say, Fielden. But that was when we got hit when he was the Fielden thing, wasn't it? With the
year after, yeah.
The year after.
We could have swallowed that points deduction that year. By the end of it, we were flying. Yeah. We just missed out on the.
No.
Mark, your memories of 2006. What were you doing? What were your memories?
Well, I was a student in 2006, so I was probably having a few drinks at most of the games, or turning up to games after already having had a few drinks, probably. And it might have been my way to ease the way through for that first half of the season, up until, when was it? June, and the Catalans home game when Chris Vadlinski came out of retirement. And you talked about Fielden and you talked about Dobson, but Chris Vadlinski coming out of retirement to a squad that was pretty much bereft of leadership, and Sean O'Loughlin was pretty new to the captaincy job. Brian Fletcher was brought in to try and add some support around that, but I'm not sure that worked out, even though he was an absolutely brilliant player. I had hair. If we're keeping the theme of what our hair was then, I had hair in 2006, quite long hair, big fringe. Those were the days. And I remember a lot of points in that season, and watching the games back, like you said, on Wigan TV. The game away at Leeds with the Ashton to Calderwood try was one of those moments I remember being in the stands for vividly. It was a fantastic moment. And the last game of the season as well, when actually all the pressure was off because we were safe by then, unbelievably, against Hull at home. And Palliasina scored the first try, and we had £4 on him at 30-1 at the in-stadium bookies. The problem being, we also had bets on for last try scorer and points margin, so we couldn't cash it in during the game.
I did exactly the same
shut
with
before the end of the game. So we had to keep the slip till the next season because there was no Tote Sport bookmakers near us. So it took. I think we actually won on the margin of victory as well. So it took me best part of 4 months to cash in on 140 quid.
Yeah, not as flash as you. Back in 2006, I put £1 on Palliacina. But I remember, it was something. Was it about 40 to 1 or something? It was something ridiculous.
30 or 40 to 1.
Yeah. And I remember getting that.
He came off the bench as well, didn't he? So that's why his odds were always so long.
I'm so. I really wanted
shirt.
I'm really wanted to put a warning out to Rob to not watch this show because it's quite painful. Flashback. Although it's quite painful and joyous for Wigan fans, it's very painful for Castleford fans because they obviously got relegated. But he's calling us cheats. We got deducted 2 points, even with the deduction of 2 points. We it doesn't really matter. You were. Did they get beat by Wakefield? Didn't they get relegated by Wakefield?
Yeah, the first £1 million game. Yeah.
Okay. So, Rob, if you want to talk about...
And forever all the Eurosceptics in Castleford felt even more justified with Catalans being saved from relegation because it was their first season.
Absolutely. And that's why... not to get Stu started on it, but that's why Toronto should also be exempt from relegation, but never mind. David, 2006, you must have been about 8 then, were you?
Wait. I went for the Royal Bank of Scotland at the time. Remember them? And I just met Daisy's mum at that point as well. But I was going to the rugby, and yeah, it was just a bizarre season. Obviously, you had Mill Warden getting absolutely tonked at Saints, and then Noble coming in and like he's already said, Field. But a lot of people forget about Dobson coming in. His kicking was just incredible. But when you're used to having Danny Orr and Dennis Moran navigating the centre of your pitch, it's a refreshing change.
So let's have a look at some sort of highlights from that season, or discuss some highlights. So we won our game against Huddersfield, third game in, 36-20. Pretty, a decent enough start. Not really. I mean, we won 1 game from 3. Didn't look too bad.
Shall we talk about all the new players that came in as well that year? Because there was Richard, there was Scott Logan, there was Brian Fletcher.
Let's have a look at this as a squad. So you got Chris Redlinski, obviously decided to retire and then came back and played 6 games. Mark Calderwood, Pat Richards. It
was injured for most of the first half of the season, weren't they, Calderwood?
Yeah, Pat Richards, who we signed as a grand final. Sorry, Stu, what you say?
Who's Ashton?
We're going through it in numerical order. He's number 30.
Oh, sorry, lad. I thought you were just
Chris Redlinski. I'm giving you a clue. We start with number 1. And then we went to Calderwood.
Yeah, we signed a winger from the NRL Grand Final and decided to put him into centre where he clearly didn't have a clue about how to defend. That's one of them hidden stories of 2006, Sean, that no one talks about. Calderwood got injured in May, I think it was, and Richard started then playing on the wing rather than in the centre. And then Dallas got injured, didn't he? Just when we'd started winning games, Brett Dallas got injured, and Richards flipped to the other wing. But then we actually realised that this guy wasn't a centre, obviously. Yeah. The first half of the season when we all wanted to send him back to Australia was a complete misnomer. And actually, we've got a decent winger on our hands here.
And we didn't even realise that he was a decent kicker either until the season later, which is even more criminal. So you got Pat Richards, who decided, like you said, this was an NRL winning winger who was on the receiving end of that Benji Marshall pass. Ian Millwood says he'll be a good centre. Number 4, David Violiki. Probably his worst season for Wigan, but he kind of redeemed himself in 2007 when he got the number 14 jersey. He probably had his best season the year after. But David Violiki, number 4. Brett Dallas, number 5, his final season. Was it at Wigan, Mark?
It was his last season because his last action was playing, I don't think fully fit, but playing against Hull FC in the last game, trying to kick a goal from near the touchline. I think it just fell short. And he left his boots, didn't he, on the pitch?
So Brett Dallas that season scored 10 tries in 23 appearances. Then who we got at number 6, Danny Orr. So Danny Orr for me should have been a lot better for Wigan than he actually was. When he played for Castleford, he was brilliant. And then as soon as he came to Wigan, I don't know whether it was the style of rugby, I don't know what it was. But Danny Orr just had glimpses, but we just never ever could get him to replicate that, could we? Number 7, your favourite player, David, Dennis Moran.
Played fullback as well that season. Wow, it's amazing. Played fullback against Saints when we got absolutely cold.
We played fullback, Saints away, we lost 48-10, and then Harlequins at home when we lost 30 points to 18. And then he only lasted a few games after that, and we signed Dobson. Scott Logan. Remember Scott Logan? Number 8.
Do you know what? Until I watched the highlights, I'd forgotten he played for us completely.
And I thought, well, yeah, I remember signing him, but I don't think he actually played that often. He played pretty much most of the games. Started pretty much every game in the first half of the season, and then moved to the bench in the second half of the season when Paliacina started starting. Mickey Hyam at hooker.
Yeah.
Paliacina number 10.
It was Becker's first season, weren't it? Didn't he score on his debut as well?
He scored at Catalan.
He was the only player in the first half of the season that any of us loved, weren't he? And the Paliacina chant would go up when he came on.
2 more tries than Dennis Moran that season, Paliacina.
Yeah. You know what I remember about him? That comment with Steve O'Toole. Here he goes, bish, bash, bosh, and he's over for the try. I always stick in my mind with Paliacina that it was like a tap of a penalty, I can't remember who it was, and he scored. And Steve O was like, oh my God, it's like as if it's his father way. He was jumping up and down on that. But I always remember that. Bish, bash, bosh. Yeah. Looking up on YouTube, it was funny as out. Like, yeah.
Tautai even scored at Hull once, remember that?
What a
11,
try that was.
It was a good try.
That was probably in the shirt, wasn't it?
No, it was in the bright.
Oh, yeah. Top. The green one, yeah.
Gareth Hawke, number 11. He did all right that season. Brian Fletcher, number 12. Sean O'Loughlin, number 13. That was his first season as captain, wasn't it? And I think he really struggled with the captaincy. And I think, Mark, you touched upon that, the leadership. Yeah,
and I don't blame Sean O'Loughlin for it at all. I remember at the time thinking he was our defensive leader at that stage, and he clearly led by his actions. And actually, when you watch it, he played so differently when we were attacking back then. When you watch those games, he seemed to play a lot wider. He certainly didn't get involved in any of the structured plays, but he popped up so often in like broken play to actually help create stuff for the team. He'd always be the next man in at dummy half when the hooker had done a scoot, which we did a lot with Godwin and Hyam as well. Yeah, Lockers was better than people realised that year.
Number 14, Kevin Brown, made a decent career for himself, hasn't he? He just beat us when he was playing for Salford. Number 15, Danny Tickle. Bryn Hargreaves, 16. Jerry CU, number 17. Number 18, Wayne Godwin. Now, I remember the uproar about Wayne Godwin. I don't know, David, if you remember this. This was Wayne Godwin's last year, and he had that relationship with Mickey Hyam, both very similar hookers. We had hookers who would run from dummy half at that point, which is quite unique, up until Sam Powell learned how to do it last year. But we got rid of Wayne Godwin at the end of that year. And can anybody remember who we brought in the year after to replace him?
Was it Shane Millard?
Shane Millard. I remember the uproar. Do you remember signing Shane Millard, David, and the uproar that?
Yeah.
And he came over. He came to us. What? It was from Leeds, and then did he go to Widnes?
Yeah.
So.
And we got rid of Wayne Godwin. Number 19, Harrison Hansen.
Godwin was a fan's favourite, wasn't he? Like even before he became the Wagger character that he is today on like Rugby AM and stuff. He always had that great connection with the fans, didn't he? And he was a player who gave absolutely everything. He got every bit of ability out of his capabilities. Yeah. Like he was never going to be the greatest rugby league player, but he played to the absolute maximum every single time he played.
And we're not going to go through all. We'll sort of focus on some games in just a second. But number 20, Michael Dobson. Does anybody do you remember the uproar of signing Michael Dobson? Can anybody remember how it actually works? Because he was on loan at Catalans, wasn't he?
Catalan.
So did we take over his loan, or did we loan him from Catalans, who were loaning him from wherever he was in Australia?
Wasn't he at Canberra in Australia?
Yeah.
And then he got Catalan. No, I don't think we loaned him. I'm pretty sure we signed him, but then he ended up going back to Canberra anyway.
We paid a fee, so he was on loan on a monthly. He was on some sort of loan from Canberra to the Catalans, but then we offered to pay a fee to take him on loan for the second half of the season. And so I think they said, well, sorry, Catalans, these guys have paid us money now, so we've got to go there. I don't know if Catalan's got any of this fee for his registration or whatever. I can't remember that, but I'm pretty sure we paid a fee, whereas they hadn't paid a fee. So he had to, so he came to us.
I mean,
If I remember right, it was about 60. No, that can't remember. It was a considerable 5-figure sum for someone to come who was like a 20-year-old kid who all he done is kicked a few goals for Catalans in his whole entire career, and no one had heard of him until that. And we were like, well, we need someone to kick goals. Let's get him.
Yeah, we have nobody in this Pat Richards. I mean, what was Pat Richards doing in training? Like, surely when Noble came in, he was like, right, let's just have all kicking practice.
He did kick for about 5 or 6 games, but then Dobson came.
So Richards kicked 11 goals. Danny Orr kicked 1. Dennis Moran kicked 1. Danny Tickle, we had Danny Tickle, 33. And then Michael Dobson came in and scored 142 points in 14 games.
Including that hat-trick against Bradford. That was probably his crowning game, wasn't it? When we absolutely smashed the reigning Super League champions.
I mean, that was the start of the end, really, wasn't it, for Bradford that season? And then obviously the following year with the playoff comeback against us. And then I guess a couple of other notable players. 29, Chris Ashton, as you already mentioned, Stu. 28 appearances, 14 tries, and then obviously we signed Stuart Fielding partway through the season.
Hold on. We signed Tim Yonkers.
Tim Yonkers is there.
Oliver Wills. We signed Jordan James. We signed Danny Hill.
And can anybody remember that player that we took on trial that I mentioned a few weeks ago?
No clue.
Jordan James. Most interesting fact about Jordan James isn't the fact he's a former military man or a house DJ. It was the fact that he was the first man ever to go through the complete rounds of Take Me Out without getting one woman turn the lights off for him.
Yeah. and then the next rugby league player to go was Mike Bishop, who used to play for London, and he pretty much just survived by the skin of his teeth with about 3 left at the
end. and then we re-signed him, didn't we? We re-signed Jordan James.
Jordan James came back to us in one of our really good seasons, 2013
or 13, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it must have been something strange. But I mean, I remember thinking it was a strange sign at the time. I think it's even more stranger now when I think about it. Why did we sign him? We always had a thing, though, with Sean Wayne about
signing.
Did
Paul Prescott retire halfway through the season?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So, right, a couple of... where were we at that point? So on June the 18th, we were 8 points.
Hold on, sorry. There's one other player who came in to save us that we didn't talk about, and I've just remembered because I took a sip of my beer, and the beer I'm drinking is Bro Good a Pale by Seven Brothers Brewery, and one of the Seven Brothers is Nathan McAvoy.
Nice.
Got a link. Is he sponsored tonight?
I'm desperately trying to get him to send me some free beer. It's doing my head in. They've not sent me any yet.
Have you tried all Seven Brothers, though? One of them.
Seven Brothers.
So that Castellans game that you mentioned at home, June the 18th, 8 points adrift at the bottom of the table with 12 games to go. That is ridiculous. We had to win 4 games without anybody above us winning anything to even get level to where we should have been. So to actually
everyone above us had won that weekend against top half sides. It was like, what the hell is going on here?
So then that game where we came back, Catalans, we won 24-18. I remember that game, and I don't think they put it on Wigan. I think they have put it on Wigan TV. It's on there. 24-18. Dobson kicking 6 goals, and they actually pretty much won us the game, didn't they?
Was that the game where the Catalans player hurdled over the in-goal boards and nearly broke his neck on the steps at the bottom of the north stand?
I don't know. I'm not seeing that.
I remember that.
Yeah, Justin Murphy, the winger.
That's right.
That looked nasty.
Yeah, did I?
So we went on a run of beating Catalans, Warrington, Harlequins, Wakefield, Salford, who'd already knocked us out of the Challenge Cup earlier that year. Lost 22-20 away at Warrington. Came back home and played Catalans again, and we decided we're much better now and beat them 40 points to 4, third time of meeting them. Beat Leeds away 2018, Huddersfield, Bradford, and then lost second to last game 31-30 at Harlequins. which ended any hope of getting in the playoffs. Because I remember about 3 or 4 games towards the end of the season, it was like, actually, we could get in the playoffs here. And we were on that good a form that not many teams would have fancied playing us in the playoffs, but we missed out on the playoffs by 4 points in the end. And then that Hull FC game. But I guess the strange thing throughout that season, and the reason why we wanted to talk about it, is it was that adversity during the 2006 season. I think that made a lot of fans come back to the DW or JJB as it was. And you look at some of the attendances. Bradford at home, 15,800. Hull last game of the season with nothing to play for, 16,500 there. St Helens at
The
home.
Warrington game after we signed we signed Fielden. We beat Catalans. Radlinski had come out of retirement for that game. Then we signed Stuart Fielden. Then we played Warrington, didn't we? And that was a great crowd.
Warrington, 16,000 at that game as well. So although we weren't winning the games, we were getting players. And that's kind of, I feel we can kind of, when we get back to rugby league, that's the kind of mentality I think that a lot of fans will have in terms of wanting to support the club and wanting to support the sport, really, to ensure that it survives during whatever's to come. Anybody else got any sort of lasting memories of 2006? And I think 2006 was a season where we eventually, at the end of it, got rid of a lot more of the deadwood. We brought in some player called Trent Barrett and Thomas Luluai. And then we started building, didn't we? And obviously a couple of seasons later, we saw the emergence of Sam Tompkins. But any lasting memories of 2006?
Is that when Joel came in as well? Is that when Joel started playing properly?
Yeah, Joel and
2007,
Hansen, weren't it? Kind of started around 2006,
Yeah.
2007 time, yeah. Oh, I've got one for you. Because I just watched some of the highlights and that I'd not watched the full games of over the last few weeks. And the one that I watched, one of the ones I watched was the Harlequins away game. And interesting side note on that game, it was Henry Paul's last ever try assist for Wigan because he threw a pass that Brett Dallas intercepted when the length of the field to score.
I forgot that Henry Paul played for Harlequins.
Yeah.
Of all the sort of, I've seen, obviously, we did that video, didn't he, last week for Wigan, so I've seen a lot more videos of Henry Paul, and one thing that struck me when I was sort of reading a few things on him, that I always thought that Henry Paul played far more games for Bradford than he did for Wigan, but he was at Wigan, he played more games for Wigan than he did for Bradford,
Yeah.
which I was quite surprised at before he went to rugby union. David, you did promise us a story of yourself and Dwayne West, so tell us about this story of you and Dwayne West.
Well, back in the day when Graham West was player coach of the A team, or it's known as the reserves now, but back in the day they were called the Alliance and the A team. And I used to go week in, week out to the A team games, home and away. Friday night, jump in a car with family and friends and travel up to even to Cumbria, to Whitehaven and Carlisle and Workington on a Friday night, which was insane when you think about it. But there's a lot of camaraderie there. And at the home games, I used to ball boy with Dwayne West, so that shows you about the quality of me. I wasn't even good enough to ball boy for the first team. I was only good enough to ball boy in a reserve capacity. But back at the time, we used to turn up. We didn't have any tracksuits or anything. Just used to turn up in our own clothes. There was 4 of us, and I used to always ball boy with Dwayne. And one story is like the Dougie run. So when we played at Central Park, obviously sometimes the ball would go over the Douglas stand into the river at the back of it. And that was when you'd be commissioned as a ball boy to go on the Dougie run, which consisted of you pegging it from wherever you were down that, if you were patrolling that side, all the way down the side of the pitch, down the back, straight down the tunnel, grabbing this big, massive fishing net that was just situated outside Taffy, Derek Jones, the groundsman, outside of his room, out the main entrance where the honours boards were, and then you had to go and find the rugby ball to try and retrieve it, if it was in the river. Often it was all
gone upstream.
Back at the start, yeah, but literally you had to find it. And if you got it, you used to get 50p for each time you did it. So, Andy Farrell kept me in Panini stickers for years because he used to shoot it over about 8 times a game. So that was one story. But then the other time is in a time that whilst ball boy inadvertently injured a Hull KR reserve team winger. So that was back in the time when, not like today, where the ball's already on the centre pitch waiting for the players for the restart. This was a time where we would have to go behind the goals when they were converting it and get the ball and then kick it back onto the pitch for them to kick off with. So one of us would be behind the sticks, and the other one, at the time, because there wasn't any crowds there, the other one would jump over the wall into the pop end and go and catch the ball and throw it back. Well, as Dwayne had gone to get the ball, passed it back to me. I went to kick it over the players, and I kind of mishit it, but I mishit it really, really hard and hit this Hulk AR winger's thigh at point blank range, and he went straight down, and he came off with a dead leg and took him out for the game. I was like, and that was a time when there was only 2 subs, I think, as well. So it was a nightmare. I've never been so scared in my life. Just thank God I was ball boying with Gray and West Sun, because they'd never give me any trouble.
Part of me wanted to sort of visualize you as being sort of like in your early 20s when you were doing it, and like you were going West with sort of like just turn up with a 6-pack.
2006.
Yeah, like just turn up with like a 6-pack. I'm like, yeah, we'll ball boy. And then you just sort of decided that you were doing that because you went rogue. But no, it's, and I want to keep that in my mind as being what you actually did, rather than being a lot younger than that.
Dwayne just nipping down after a game from St Helens just to help his dad out.
Yeah,
he only had one game, did he?
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't even score the try anyway, did he? And that's what he's famous for. Chris Joint scored it. There's a comment, we're going to go in a second, there's a comment on here about subtitles. That's nothing to do with us, that's Facebook. You can turn subtitles off. I know I do joke about needing subtitles for Stu, but they actually are there from Facebook. Just press. There is a button that you can press. It comes in helpful when you're listening to Stu.
I'd love to see what the subtitles come up with for Stu. I bet it doesn't get anything right.
It's got to. I'm telling you,
it knows what you need.
Will be right.
That was for Mr. Melling.
Right, everybody. Thank you for watching. We didn't get Matt tonight, so. Yeah, he's still on his way.
What do we think Matt was doing in 2006?
I actually think that was one of his blank years. I reckon that you won't be able to remember a thing about 2006. I didn't tell you what I was doing in 2006. Nothing exciting, but I just started at college at Runshaw College, and I went to Runshaw with what's his name? The referee that went over to Australia, Tim Roby. He was in the same year as me at Runshaw. Sam G, who I don't know if he's still playing, but he was a captain who went on to captain Oldham. I think he's still playing at Oldham. But yeah, but that's where I was in 2016. And then I aged very quickly.
Did you do philosophy with Tim Roby?
No, I didn't do philosophy with Tim Roby. Them stupid flipping articles that he does. No, but he was in the same canteen as me, and he was deemed sort of cool enough to be in the same canteen as me at Runshaw. He was in Mardale. Can't remember what it was called. Right, okay. Thank you everybody for joining us. We'll find out where Matt is, and then hopefully over the next couple of weeks we'll have Jackson Hastings on with us as well, who sort of just said on Twitter that he'll come and join us for some kind of show. I feel like we need to set out rules when I speak to Jackson Hastings about what we can and can't talk about. But he's doing lots of Instagram videos at the moment, so he's going to join us over the next week or so. So look out for that. Stu, David, Mark, thank you for joining us. Everybody, thank you for watching. And we'll see you at some point over the next couple of weeks. See you later, guys.
Take care.